Good afternoon, everyone. My name's Charlotte Kelshiker, speaking to you this afternoon from Oxford Said. Welcome to our 1+1 information session. Now, before we get things underway, I'd just like to make sure that you can hear me wherever you're tuning in from this afternoon. If you can perhaps type into the question box some feedback for me, just a quick yes. Oh, thanks, Rika. You're first out the box there. Thanks, Carly. Thanks, Sachira. Thanks ever so much for that feedback. Let's get things underway. So, as I said, my name is Charlotte Kelshiker. I'm one of the senior advisors in recruitment and admissions for the Oxford MBA 1+1, and I'm joined here this afternoon by my colleague, Liam Kilby.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you are. It's nice to have you with us today.
And this afternoon, the objective of our session with you is to just walk you through the 1+1 opportunity here at Oxford Said. We'll explain what the programme is. We'll unpack some of the entry criteria for you. We'll talk about partnering programmes, and we'll have a think about the application process. Now, while I'm speaking to the slide deck this afternoon, Liam is going to be fielding some of the questions. So if you do see anything on a slide where you want to ask a question, please feel free to just type your question into the dialog box, and Liam will be sending written responses throughout the broadcast, though if he spots any questions that he thinks are appropriate for perhaps the whole audience to hear, we will be saving those until the end of our session together so that we can speak to that question and hopefully provide information that more than just one of you finds useful. So without further ado, let's just talk about what the 1+1 is, because it's more than just the Oxford MBA. In fact, what the 1+1 offers you is a package, if you like, of 2 degrees studied over 2 consecutive academic years here at Oxford University. It enables you to complete in year 1 a taught master's degree, choosing from a range of different academic disciplines. And then in the second year here at Oxford, you undertake the Oxford MBA. So what the 2-year experience offers you is extra time to think about perhaps the career that you're looking to break into or the transition that you're looking to effect. It's certainly likely to be a more cost-effective option than undertaking a classic 2-year MBA. And it also offers you, on top of the MBA education, a real academic deep dive, which a 2-year MBA doesn't, because it's purely focused on graduate management education, rather than the opportunity to specialise and deep dive in that first year. And very importantly and excitingly, as a 1+1 student at Oxford, you have the opportunity to be considered for the Pershing Square Scholarship, which is an extremely prestigious scheme that offers full funding for both degrees while you're here, plus mentorship from a really exciting panel of leaders. And it offers you not only money that covers your course fees, but also a generous living expenses stipend on top. So a very prestigious and attractive scholarship scheme, of which more a little later on. So let's think about the structure of the 1+1 option here. In year 1, as this slide speaks to, you undertake your academic deep dive. Here, you're thinking about your academic specialisation, if you will. Let's say, for example, you're looking to forge a career in a particular sector or particular discipline where a graduate level education in a very specific subject is highly valued, but you also need to obtain an education about business, management, and leadership more broadly. The 1+1 really brings together both of these learning objectives inside one wrapper. So in year 1, you undertake your partner MSc or MST. You are focusing your academic life around a very narrow curriculum rather than the breadth of an MBA. So you really have the opportunity to immerse yourself in a very specialist program with perhaps a very small cohort of academics around you that will tend to come from a very similar background. But in your first year, even though you might be undertaking a program that's taught, for example, at the Faculty of Music or Geography, History, perhaps the Blavatnik School of Government, the Department of Computer Science. So even though your academic life will unfold in one of those academic departments, we would very much recognise you, value you and welcome you to the SBS community. As a 1+1 student, you're not just coming here for 1 year for your MBA, you're coming to Oxford with a purpose, a 2-year purpose. And in that first year, even though your classes aren't here at the school, we very much hope that you would plug in as a member of the school's community. So we would, for example, make sure that you are invited to every event that our MBA students would be enjoying during that year. There will also be exclusive events just for you in the 1+1 community to bring you together with, for example, students that have completed their MSc the prior year and are now studying for their MBA program. So we'd bring you together with members that have already graduated from their partner program. And also, and importantly, in that first year, even though you're not a business school student, as well as treating you as a member of our community, we would give you access to some of the resources here at the school, particularly around career planning. The professional intention behind studying for the 1+1, we would be able to connect you with our careers development team, where you'd be able to benefit from executive coaching, preparation for undertaking technical selection processes and assessment centres, depending on the kind of career that you're aiming towards, whether that be in the impact sector or in finance or in consulting or heading towards a career in a global industry. So you'd be able to tap into the careers-oriented resources in that first year before you've even started your MBA year. And then let's jump forward by a year. You're now starting your MBA. So you've completed your MSc or your MST in your first year. You have graduated from that program and you're back in Oxford, but this time to enjoy our 1-year MBA program, which, unlike your MSc, which was a very narrowly focused, academically specialist program, the MBA offers you a broad-based management education, providing you, through the standard core curriculum, the real foundations of everything that you would need to understand, no matter what function you're going to work in the future, no matter what industry. There's also the opportunity through the MBA curriculum, though, to build on top of that broad-based foundation and start to tailor or specialise the content through choosing appropriate electives. I'm sure many of you have already seen our web content, maybe downloaded brochures, and you'll know that there are 8 core curriculum programs that are taught in the MBA, followed up with 7 electives that you choose from a range of about 30 or 40 different options. Most are taught here in Oxford, some are taught away from campus, some are taught internationally. And depending on your particular area of expertise or interest, thinking perhaps about your career, whether that be sector oriented or whether that is thinking about your career through a geographical lens, you will choose electives that make sense to you and your own narrative. So you might pick a pathway through the MBA that speaks very much to a career in finance, or one that speaks to a career in global industry, or you might be exploring the opportunities offered by the third sector or not-for-profits or social enterprises. Maybe you're interested in running your own business, whether that's for profit or not. So what I'm saying is that from that vast array of electives, you would be able to pick those that appeal most to you. And during the MBA, there are also a number of applied learning opportunities. So it's not all just about following the curriculum, learning the curriculum, writing, doing essays, submitting pieces of coursework, as well as all of that, and undertaking things like case studies and lectures and tutorials. There's also quite a lot of team-based activities that really put learning into practice. Good example of this is Go2, which is Global Opportunities and Threats Oxford. And that's a team-based activity, a team-based competition, if you like, where as a class, we will pose a question to you that's been inspired by one of the UN's Sustainable Development Goals, and we'll ask you in your team to come up with solutions. And you'll really need to employ some systems thinking in order to come up with some ideas. You will also need to step beyond the bounds of the business school and perhaps start to ask yourself, I wonder what departments that are studying other aspects would make of this question. For example, I wonder what geographers would say is the answer to this challenge. I wonder what philosophers would say we should be thinking about. I wonder what they're doing in the Department of Physics to tackle this challenge. How about the implications for international development or law or medicine? So through a challenge like Go2, you really start to not only put into practice the academic content that we've taught you here in the MBA, but you start to roam more broadly across the university to understand what fellow students studying other disciplines would make of that question, and maybe the solutions work that they're already engaged in tackling that particular challenge. So there's a real blend of learning styles during your MBA year and teaching styles. And the launch, last but not least, is you launching yourself into your future, having completed 2 degrees here at Oxford. So I mentioned that you can partner your MBA with a number of different MSc or MST courses. I'm afraid there is just a finite list. Not every academic department across the university has chosen to partner with the business school in the 1+1 scheme at the moment, but those that have include those that are shown here on this particular slide. So we've got the Blavatnik School, for example. They offer their MPP, their Masters in Public Policy, as a partner program. So if you are coming from a public policy background, or you have strength and depth in the voluntary sector, and you're wanting to take that forward post-MBA, then the MPP might make a sensible combination choice for you. If you are working in the technology space, then the Department of Computer Science might be interested in an application from you. The law faculty partners with us for this program, the Masters in Law and Finance. Oxford Internet Institute, so for those of you that are interested in social science of the internet, perhaps matters like big data, how some of the social media platforms are using and sharing and exposing our data, or controlling or owning that data, if that's of particular relevance to your career trajectory, then you might want to look at OII programs and how they might complement your MBA year. We also partner with the Department of Social Policy and Intervention and the School of Geography and the Environment. Increasingly, climate action is something that we're all conscious of and that we're all working with, either in a deliberate sense or not. This could be engaging with this issue in your workplace at the most practical, day-to-day level, or it could be perhaps thinking about solutions in the climate action space. Perhaps you're already working, for example, at a not-for-profit that's tackling some of the issues that's posed by climate impacts and global heating. So the School of Geography and the Environment offer a number of MSc programs that partner with our MBA. But there are many, many more. So here's a full list as things currently stand, and this is the list that applies for this application round. So if you are interested in an MSc course that's not listed here, then unfortunately it's not currently offered within the MBA 1+1 wrapper. Thinking now about the Pershing Square Scholarship, as I mentioned at the top of the broadcast this afternoon, this is an extremely prestigious and hence competitive scholarship. Some of the benefits include coverage of full tuition and college fee and living expense stipend for your study for both years. Now, our scholars, as I say, it's prestigious, it's competitive. There's only 4 or 5 Pershing Square scholars that are announced each year, and the panel is really looking for academic achievement, but also academic potential and leadership potential. We're really interested in who you are, what you've done, and your motivation for wanting to do the Oxford 1+1. There is a separate essay that we ask you to write as part of your 1+1 application that asks how you intend to change the world. Now, that might sound very flippant, but believe me, it's absolutely not. We really do believe, and in fact, we know that our 1+1 students, and particularly our Pershing Square scholars, are individuals who are very likely to change the world for the better and to genuinely leave their mark. So we are interested in how you intend to change the world, because our scholars truly are individuals who are capable of doing just that. So Oxford, you probably know quite a lot about the university already. You might have listened to other webinars about the MBA, or perhaps you listen to podcasts that are run by the rest of the university, for example. You possibly know that as a student here, you have to be a member of one of our colleges. So in order to matriculate and become a student at Oxford, you need to be a college member. You're not taught in college or anything like that, but what college really gives you is the opportunity to join a separate community away from your academic department. So yes, if you're a 1+1 student, you might be taught, let's say, for example, in your first year at the Blavatnik School of Government. So that's your academic experience for year 1, and that is your network, if you like, in year 1, though you'll also be hanging out here at the school from time to time, coming along to some of our 1+1 exclusive events. But it's through your college that you're likely to meet the widest range of students who are not studying the same course as you. You might be bumping into undergraduate students. You might be spending time meeting DPhils, so students who are currently researching towards their thesis for their PhD. But I believe that it's through your college membership that you end up having some of the most magical conversations, because they're usually quite unexpected. You know, when you sit in your class in the Blavatnik School, or when you sit in your class at Oxford Said, that you're going to learn interesting stuff from the person sitting next to you, because they're just like you. But in your college, you might be sitting next to someone at dinner who, on the face of it, is nothing like you. Perhaps they're quite a lot younger, perhaps they're quite a lot older, perhaps their background to date is vastly different to yours. Let's say they are studying, I don't know, archaeology or zoology, something completely unrelated, and you might think, therefore, not a great deal to learn from them, or indeed, the flip side of that, not a great deal to teach them. But you'd be really surprised where some of these unexpected conversations can take you. And it's through your college community that you can really forge some of those lasting relationships, if you like, and to build that more academically diverse network. So through your college membership, you will also be enjoying formal dinners, amazing guest speakers across the university. Every evening, there's probably at least 20 or 30 different talks that I could go to if I could bend time and do that. Some of these are run through colleges, some of them are offered at different academic departments. As an Oxford student, you would be able to attend pretty much any of those. There's always more on offer than you can possibly do in your day. There are all kinds of balls and bops and dances and social fun and games that is going on across the wider university. Lots of societies and clubs. Now, some of these have a very serious focus. There will be clubs here that are interested in, let's say, application of artificial intelligence and what it means for the future of the workplace. There could be, for example, a network for people working in private equity. So quite a sort of narrow, sensible, professional focus, if you like. Whereas others are really just about having fun. You might want to join a club or a society concerned with a particular sport that you either love and that you play regularly, or that you want to try out for the first time, or it might be just something that's a bit of fun and relaxation for you. I don't know, the University Wine Appreciation Society, of which, yes, there is such a thing. You can certainly play a lot of sport while you're here at Oxford if you are good at juggling your time and your commitment to your programme, your commitment to your college community and getting the best out of that experience. But it does still leave you with a bit of time to play sport. That can be a really important part of your life while you're here at Oxford, because academically life can be quite tough, quite challenging, quite intense programmes of study, and great to have some balance in your life around physical exercise, perhaps leaving buildings, getting outside, trying something new, having some fun. Not everyone wants to get up at 4 a.m. to row in the middle of winter. Rowing's not compulsory here at Oxford, but a great thing to try if you've never done it before. But the whole Oxford experience really offers you a lot more than just 2 academic degrees. So thinking now for a moment around the MBA application requirements. So yes, as we've said, the 1+1 is about undertaking 2 degrees, but focusing for the moment just on the MBA application requirements. You need to have completed your undergraduate degree. First and foremost, you need to have done reasonably well. And by reasonably well, I mean broadly in line with a UK 2-1, sort of upper second class honours. We are not particularly bothered what subject you read for your undergraduate degree, though, when it comes to an MBA application here. So it could be any subject pretty much, but you need to have done fairly well. Don't worry about converting your international qualification across to the UK system. That's something that we will do as part of processing your application, but you will need to realise that your qualification needs to sit broadly in line with the UK 2-1. And for those of you familiar with the US GPA system, that would mean around about a 3.5, something in that ballpark. And you'll need to be in possession of your academic transcripts. You will be asked to upload a scan of these during your online application. You also need to have sat for either the GMAT or GRE standardised test. Now, this is mandatory. I'm afraid everybody needs to produce either a GMAT or a GRE score report for the application for their MBA. In terms of scores, the GMAT, thinking about total scores, I would say that a score in excess of 650 is likely to be seen as more competitive. To give you an idea, the current class median sits around 690. It doesn't mean that you need to have scored 690. Remember that your GMAT or GRE, it is but one data point across the whole of your application profile. But in terms of realistically speaking, yeah, I would say aim for around 650 in your GMAT. In your GRE, that's probably a verbal or a quantitative score of about 161 in those 2 components. Either way, you need to have taken one of those tests before you apply, because we need you to upload your score report as part of your MBA application. You also need work experience to apply to the MBA. We would like you to distill that experience down into just a 1-page CV. Now, for some of you, that's quite normal standard practice. For others, it will mean you're going to need to revisit your CV and perhaps prune it a little bit. But if you can get that down to just 1 page, and for those of you with a lot of work experience, that can be tough, but it's good practice. It's certainly what our careers team would want you to do as soon as you start the programme, so why not start now? Thinking about that experience, we don't particularly mind in which sector you have gained your work experience. What we do ask is for at least 2 years full-time work experience when you're submitting your MBA application. And that really speaks to the fact that when you come to study the 1+1 or an MBA here at Oxford, you need to bring something to the class. You need to bring some real life experience. You need to know how it feels to perhaps be managed or indeed managed. And if maybe not managing people always, it could be managing projects, it could be managing budgets, certainly managing your own time. You need to have started out on your professional path, and perhaps you've been promoted, perhaps you've gained some international experience and had to work with people who are not like you or doing a similar job to you but in a different part of the world. You will need to understand what it's like to perhaps handle a tricky situation, whether that is managing a difficult stakeholder in a project or whether that's supporting your staff through their own development journey. What I'm really saying is you need to come to the classroom with some experience to share. As well as learning during the MBA, it's very much a giving experience. And it's good, I think, to remember that an MBA is not just an academic degree. It is quite a vocational experience, and the content is certainly written in a way that we ask you to come with plenty to say, with opinions and with experience to share. Now, for your MBA application, we ask you to register 2 people to act as your referee. They could be academics or they could be people that you have a professional relationship with. The majority of our candidates, I would say, do tend to have professional referees. These are people that they've worked with. They're not necessarily their superiors, though they might be. There's certainly people, though, that can give us examples of you and how you perform in the workplace, in the real world. They'll really be able to speak to your strengths and also to your areas for development. So you're going to want to think quite carefully about who are going to be your best cheerleaders, people that are ready, willing and able to commit the time to thinking about your application to Oxford and to supporting that in the best possible way by putting together a nice, detailed, full letter of recommendation that will really help the admissions committee understand a little bit more about you. We ask you as part of your MBA application to not only write the essay that I mentioned earlier for the 1+1 about how you intend to change the world, but we also ask you, what else would you like the admissions committee to know about you that isn't covered somewhere else? Now, this is a short piece, it's just 250 words, but it really is your opportunity to sell yourself to the committee. Tell us something that we will find interesting that isn't covered anywhere else. You might want to explore a little bit more about what you like to do when you're not working, for example, maybe something that you do in your spare time or something about your backstory that's particularly intriguing. You might even want to address what you perceive to be a slight weakness in your overall profile, and you can perhaps demonstrate real self-awareness by speaking about that briefly in this essay. Now, if you're a national of a non-majority English-speaking country and you have never completed a degree taught entirely in English, you will need to submit either a TOEFL or an IELTS score when you apply to the MBA and indeed to your MSc programme. Headline news though, if you did your undergraduate degree or if you've already done a master's degree and it was taught and examined completely in English, you don't need to take a language test. Don't worry about it. You can just evidence to us that that's the case by either uploading your transcript, if it is printed on your transcript that the language of instruction was English, or you can obtain a letter from your university to confirm that the language of instruction for your degree was English, and we will not trouble you about taking a test. For anyone who was not educated in English at degree level and who comes also from a country where English is not the majority language, as defined by the UK Border Agency and Home Office, and those countries are listed on our website, then I'm afraid you will need to take a language test before you apply, and you will need to meet our minimum threshold standards. Again, more details about that on our website. But in terms of just headline scores, TOEFL 110, IELTS 7.5 overall. Now you'll notice I haven't spoken to the video assessment icon on this page. There's a good reason for that. And that's because the next slide is all about it. So the video assessment, this is something else that we ask you to do as part of your MBA application. And yes, it sounds very scary, but it really confers a great opportunity. What we ask you to do when you submit your application is to visit our video assessment portal and to answer 4 video questions and 1 written question. It gives us the opportunity to see you, hear you, meet you, if you like, in a virtual sense. We get to see how you think on your feet. We get to understand your communication skills. We get a little bit of insight into your personality and your approach to a question like this. And it replicates, just to a little degree, what it would be like to be interviewed. It certainly doesn't replace the interview. If you do make it through the selection process, we will still interview you one-on-one. But the video assessment is almost like a micro version of that. It's a very straightforward process. You hop onto the video assessment platform. You can then spend as much time as you like poking around and practicing. So there's a question bank there where you can see the questions, you can answer the questions, you can get used to hearing yourself, seeing yourself, overcome those nerves, get used to using the technology. Super simple to use, works on any browser pretty much, it's very robust. But you must submit your final submission by the stage deadline that you're applying under. So as I say, use as much time as you like to practice, but when you're feeling confident and you're ready to go for it and you're ready to answer those questions, you need to make sure that you do that and you complete the answers to those questions by the application stage deadline. In terms of the kind of questions that you're likely to focus during your assessment process, they really break down into 2 groups. First group of questions are very motivational, and there's probably no surprises here. Questions like, so why do you want to do an MBA? What advantages will it bring you? What knowledge or skills are you likely to acquire? So these are the kind of questions that you will have drilled and drilled, I'm sure, if you're thinking of applying to business school. So that should trip off the tongue pretty easily and with some confidence. We'll also ask you a little bit about Oxford and why you've chosen to apply to us amongst your other schools. And again, that should come to you as no surprise. And this is your chance to really tell us what you think makes our programme different. The other type of questions are much more situational. So they might ask you to reflect on a scenario that you encountered in the workplace and tell us how you responded to that particular scenario and whether you took any learnings from that. Or alternatively, the question might ask you to imagine yourself in a hypothetical situation, in which case, how would you react and why would you choose that particular course of action? Either way, those are the kind of video questions that you can expect. There's also a short written question which just shows us how quickly and fluently you write in English. A lot of those questions are less serious and a little more playful. You will be against the clock for these video submissions. You will have a couple of minutes to think about each question before answering. But when you answer, you will have 1.5 minutes against the clock. So you need to think about what you want to say, how you want to say it, and commit it to the system and move on. I thought it would be useful to look at some sample MSc requirements now, just before we move towards the end of the session and our questions and answers, because we looked in a lot of detail there about the MBA application requirements, and whilst we're in no position to provide advice about applying to the partner programme of your choice, and we certainly encourage you to go to the wider university's graduate studies prospectus to see this in detail. Looking at this example here, the MSc in Computer Science, very popular partner programme, you can see here that the requirements are quite different compared to the MBA. Yes, official transcripts, the same, CV, the same, statement of purpose, up to 2 pages, that's going to be different. 3 references, generally academic, that's different. And you can see here, because this is a very academically selective program, the entry requirements in terms of your undergraduate degree, it's much more tightly focused than for your MBA application. So here, you absolutely do need to have read for a much more quantity subject. You need to have studied something with a high mathematical component, perhaps even computing. And the level of academic excellence is slightly more rigorous than we seek in your MBA application. So you would need to, of course, meet both. You'll see here for the MSc application, they're not interested in this particular department in your GRE or a GMAT score. But they are very interested in your background. So you need to come from a background that would absolutely place you in a position to be able to cope with computer programming, mathematical notation. You need to have completed programming projects in your past. You need to understand algorithms and how they work. You might be very well versed in writing particular types of code. You might have published academically in these subjects already. So this is really just to give you a flavour of the fact that you need to submit 2 applications. And as this flowchart shows, you'll be applying to your chosen MSc or MST, and you'll be applying to the MBA as 2 separate endeavours. So you need to check the admissions requirements for both programmes. You need to check what materials and documents are required by each programme. You need to understand the different application deadlines that both programmes are operating under. And you need to make sure that those 2 independent applications are submitted on time and that they're complete. Clearly, things will then unfold from there, and the partner program will assess that application. We will assess your MBA application, and happy days, you receive an offer from both programs, and we confirm you as a 1+1 student, and we will just roll your MBA admission forward by a year so that you can undertake your preferred masters first. Check the prospectus online for the partner programs. Our application deadlines are here, as you can see. There's really just one left coming up on the 10th of January, particularly if you are looking at targeting the Pershing Square Scholarship. You need to hit that deadline. You need to be complete by then. You will see, if you look at the graduate studies prospectus for the MSCs and MSTs, some of those programs also have the 10th of January as their deadline. Some of them have a deadline later in January. So check that, be careful, make sure that both applications are complete by the relevant deadline for both. Next steps. Standard stuff, sensible stuff. You've probably already downloaded a brochure. You're listening to me today, which shows that you are already undertaking your research. You might be preparing for your GMAT or GRE already. You may want to come visit us here at an open day and get ready to start your application. But in the meantime, I think it's time for some questions. Now, a number of you will already have had your questions answered in writing by Liam, who's been beavering away here, typing nice and quietly in the corner of the room. He's now going to step round and join me here at the mic and answer some more of your questions. So I shall hand over to Liam. And let's see what you've been asking.
Thank you, Charlotte. Hopefully everyone can hear me okay. As Charlotte mentioned, I was hiding away in the corner there, just answering the questions quickly as they came through. So thank you very much for sending them through. I have left a couple unanswered on purpose, so I'll get to those straight away. We've had a few people come in and talk about internship opportunities between the 2 years, and is it available, and how do you get one? And so let me answer in general terms first of all. Depending on the length of your first year, you will have a chance in the summer before you join the MBA to do an internship. Now, some of the master's degree programs that you'll do are 9 months, some of them are 11 months, and so the 9-month timeline will lend itself more to having the time in the middle to be able to do an internship. The 11-month timeline Still can, but it might be a shorter internship, and it might mean that you'll go straight into your second year with us at the MBA without much of a break in the middle. So that's entirely your decision. I wouldn't recommend one way or the other, but just bear that in mind. The other thing to think about with the internship is that in that middle summer, it is very much an internship that you will need to primarily find and arrange yourself. We do have a wider careers team in the university that may be able to help you. You will be able to speak to the careers team at the business school in general terms about what they might be able to do, but obviously they have an MBA school, an MBA year in the school in that summer already, and so the majority of their work is supporting the on-course MBA students. So the short answer is yes, you'll have a chance to do one should you want to. The longer, slightly more detailed answer is just bear in mind of the timelines you've got, and bear in mind that you'll have to source that internship almost exclusively yourself. You'll have an internship opportunity in the MBA at the end of your MBA year that is much more in line with the careers team here at the school. But that middle summer is on you, mostly. Another question we had that came through a few times was about recommendations, and can we use the same people for both of our applications? And yes, you can. Please bear in mind that they'll have to write more than one recommendation. I would think it would be inappropriate to have the exact same reference letter for both of the programs. At the MBA here, we look for examples of leadership and teamwork and communication in your workplace if you choose to have a professional referee. The department that runs your master's program for year one, as Charlotte has mentioned, is much more of an academic reference. So you can overlap, you can use the same people if you want to, but just bear in mind that you make sure you manage their expectations as to what they'll have to write and how many things they'll have to write. And Charlotte has a point she'd like to add here as well.
Yeah, just in case it wasn't made clear earlier, and I think this is relevant to hopefully everyone who's listening, those applications that you're making, so one to the MSc of your choice, the partner program, and one to the MBA, they are completely separate. So we do not liaise with your MSc department. That application is considered by a panel of academics within that academic department, and they arrive at the outcome of that application quite separately. And we are doing concurrently a very similar process here in the business school. So they're completely separate applications, totally different application systems. We don't share thoughts, notes, documents across and between those two, just to clarify.
We had a question around what essentially happens if we get admitted to the MBA only. It's a good question. It happens sometimes. So if you think about your proposed timeline, you're thinking of taking 2 years. Year one is the MSc or MST, and it's always that order. So MSc first, MBA second. That's going to take up the next 2 years of your life, you think. And then something happens, and sadly, unfortunately, maybe you do not get into that first year. You're not admitted to the MSc, but you are admitted to the MBA. We have the option, should you want to bring that MBA forward by a year. So instead of having to fill the year you would have done the master's degree in the MSc, you don't have to find something else to fill that year. You can just come to the MBA sooner instead. Successful in both of your applications, but if that's a situation you find yourself in, then we can definitely help with that. Just on admissions and questions around that, we had a question such as if you apply to the MBA and get accepted before you apply or before you hear about the MSc, do we have to confirm enrollment on the MBA before finding out if we are accepted to the partner program? Essentially, no. If you're a 1+1 candidate, you will have an expectation that you pay your deposit to the MBA actually during the year that you're on the MSc. So you don't have to confirm your MBA place straight away. You will wait to hear back from both programs. All being well, you'll be accepted into both. You'll confirm attendance with the department that runs your partner program sooner, because that's the partner program that you'll join first. And then you'll confirm attendance with us at the business school and pay your deposit to secure your place during that first year, normally towards the beginning, around September, October, November time, 12 months in advance of joining the MBA. We've had a question, Charlotte, around can we apply for a master's degree while pursuing an MBA? Yes, you can. There's nothing stopping you from doing that. I should make it clear that you will not be a 1+1 student because you're doing them in the wrong order and you haven't applied for them both in that same academic cycle. But a number of people come to Oxford for the one-year MBA and think, oh, this really is an amazing experience. I would like to extend it. We don't have a 2-year MBA, and so they do that by thinking, how can I supplement my business knowledge that I'm learning on course with something that might allow me to take a deeper dive and specialize into another subject. And so, yes, you can apply to the master's degree while on the MBA and essentially stay in Oxford for a second year and do a second program, but it will not be part of the 1+1 program. You would not qualify for the Pershing Square Scholarship that Charlotte talked about before. And just speaking of that, we had a question, Zoe, thank you, just with regards to median GMAT or GRE score of a typical scholarship recipient. It's difficult to give you an exact number because the range does vary a little bit. As Charlotte mentioned before, in terms of admission onto the program, we say a 650 is competitive. I would personally say to be considered for Pershing Square, you're looking to be closer, much closer and above of 700, I would think, to be considered and shortlisted for the Pershing Square Scholarship. Charlotte, do you have any comments about that?
Yeah, I think that's probably fair to say. It is quite academically selective. I think for Pershing Square also, extremely interested in your leadership potential. Both proven skills and potential, and the space that you are working in, I think, is also key in terms of criteria and the impact that you are genuinely going to deliver should you be admitted to the 1+1 program. So I think we're looking for pretty much the whole rounded package for the scholars.
With regards to the GRE equivalent, again, I would say something around a 164, 165 in both of those components should come out to a 710, 720 thereabouts. And that's really kind of what you're looking for if you're thinking about GRE, but rather than the GMAT. Just a couple of quick questions left. David, thank you. You had a question around where can we go to get a conversion of our university marks? Well, formally, you don't need to do that. We'll take care of that for you when you apply, so please don't worry. If you're just interested to see what it translates as, there are many sites that you can find just on Google to have a quick look that converts it for you, but that is not part of your application requirements. If you just upload your transcripts, we have enough experience and know-how to understand how to convert marks from your local market into either our UK style or the US style GPA that Charlotte was talking about before. And then just final question, I think, Mohammed, thank you for sending this through. Is there a separate application or essay for the scholarship? If you're talking about Pershing Square, yes, there is. There is an essay that you would have to write. Should you be then shortlisted for the scholarship, there is almost certainly at least one stage, possibly 2 stages of interviews to then be selected, and that's for the scholarship itself. That is external and separate from the interview you would have for your place on the MBA. Just while we're talking about interviews, it's possible that the partnering program, the department that runs that, may not interview for your partnering program, which is why the application, as Charlotte showed you on that slide, it can seem a lot more thorough for the MSc. It's because we have the chance to meet you in person here at the MBA for the interview. Some of those departments do not hold admissions interviews and make their decision entirely from the submission materials that you apply with before that deadline. I think that's all of the questions. Charlotte, I'll hand back to you just to wrap things up. Thank you, everybody, for your sensible questions. I hope we've got to all of them. If you do have any questions, then we do have some contact details that I'm sure we can share with you to send them through at a later date. And hopefully, from my end at least, I hope we see some applications from you in the near future.
Absolutely. So thanks ever so much for joining us this afternoon. I hope that's proved useful. And as Liam says, we will be following up with you and providing our contact details so that you'll know who to speak to if you have any further questions. In the meantime, if anything is really burning top of mind and you just want to bang that email out straight away, our email address is really easy to remember. It is oxfordmba@sbs.ox.ac.uk. So very easy to find us. Please let us know how we can help you. And if you've got any questions that you would like to take offline, as it were, then we'd be delighted to follow up with you one-on-one. But thanks very much indeed. I think, yes, Liam's giving me the thumbs up. So we are done for the afternoon. So good luck with your applications. I think my top tip is really do your research. I know that you will have come to this webinar probably through the business school's website. You're possibly already receiving communications and mailings from us, and you have our brochure. I really urge you to hop onto Oxford University's Graduate Studies prospectus and read about the chosen partner programs in more depth. Check their deadlines, check their requirements. They will be different to ours. There's information there about the volume of applications they receive, the class size. There's information about teaching practice, how they select, whether they interview. So really pretty much everything that you're going to need to know. And of course, contact details for the partner departments also. So all that it remains is for me to say thanks again for listening and all the very best for your application. Goodbye.